presence to Jimmy that leads to winning. It's a swagger, even, amongst all the alphas in the NBA. I think Jimmy is an alpha among alphas. I really do. And I think Steph and Draymond needed that. They needed somebody like him because they were in some ways not feeling like they had enough of that next to them like we've had in the past. We've been spoiled, obviously. That was missing earlier in the year. Jimmy he's got presence, he's got swagger, he's got belief. You guys can feel it watching the games. Our teammates feel it. Our fans feel it. The guy wins games, and it's showing.
And Steve Kerr with us on Willard and Dibs. You told us, I think it was last year, that you hate it when the best player on the other team gets ruled out.
Yeah.
Because you feel like the team relaxes, and you spoke that maybe there was a little bit of that against Denver on Monday night. Did you sense any of that with Milwaukee last night with the good start that you guys got off to?
No, I didn't sense anything from Milwaukee's end. I sensed from our end that there was a great focus, and I would have expected that even with Steph in the lineup because our team, when we lose in an embarrassing manner like we did, we're going to respond well that next night. So I think that was part of it, but more than anything. I just think we have a really good team, and we've been in a great groove, and we had a slip-up. We recognized it, and we locked in and played a really good game, and that's the sign of a good team.
Locked in and locked down, maybe the most singular force in the history of the association, the Greek Freak. 0 field goals made against Draymond Green. When you watch that performance and you realize he's only been Defensive Player of the Year once, is that crazy to you, Steve?
It is because I think he's the best defender in the world, and I realize how good Wembanyama is, how good Rudy Gobert is, and others. But Draymond said it himself. Ask the other coaches around the league who they don't want to face. And I have personally asked other coaches around the league, my friends, and trust me, there's so much respect for Draymond around the league amongst the coaches. They see the versatility in his defense. These other guys are good defenders. I don't think any of them can do everything. Protect the rim, guard pick and roll out at half court, blow up stuff from the weak side. Draymond he's a defensive genius. He's also a competitive freak of nature. Obviously, his emotion gets the best of him at times, but it's all part of the package, and the package is it's incredibly disruptive to opposing teams, and we're so lucky to have him. He remains an amazing player, even at this stage of his career.
Coach, last week we asked you about the reintegration of Jonathan Kuminga. You said it was going to be a slow process. He came out and had a great first game back, I thought. It's now been 4 games, a little bit of a mixed bag. What are you seeing, and what have the challenges related been?
It's hard when you come back off of 10 weeks of being absent, and especially coming back to a brand new team. This is a very different team than the one he left. And so it's a little tricky to try to find your place in that, especially when the team's winning. We're whatever we are since we got Jimmy, 15-2 or something. So the focus for JK just has to be play as hard as he can for short bursts. When he does that, he's really good. Like you mentioned, the Sacramento game. I think that's got to be the focus. Run the floor really hard, attack the rim, play in short bursts, and work your way back in. And I think that's his focus right now.
Starting lineup, finishing lineup, it seems like all of it's malleable based on how everyone's playing. When you look at last night and you got down to crunch time, you didn't have JK in there. Was that a matchup thing or just you going with the hot hands?
I think if you look at our team right now, we have a lot of options to close games. I mean, the 3 guys who are going to be automatic are Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy. They're going to be out there every game. The other 2 slots, look, BP was amazing last night. He deserved to be out there. Gary Payton he has been playing incredible basketball the last couple weeks, and we needed him on Damian Lillard. So he was the obvious choice last night. Buddy Hield played big minutes down the stretch in that game. It could be Moses. Buddy and Moses we need for the shooting. Quentin Post played big minutes in the fourth quarter. If we want to space the floor with our 5-man to create the spacing that Jimmy needs, then Quentin makes sense. And then JK fits in there as well. The athleticism, the switching. If the matchups lead to that decision, then JK will be out there like he was against Denver down the stretch. So we've got a lot of options, but I can tell you right now that it's going to be somebody different each night depending on how the game's going.
Steve, I wonder if you can help us through a conversation we were having earlier today. I think for a lot of fans, they look at Monday's game and they wake up frustrated, and then you surprise everybody by beating Milwaukee without Steph, and everyone goes, okay, all square, all even. They went 1-1. It's all good. Is it that way for you guys? Did last night help you forget Monday, or is Monday still a source of frustration?
No, you move on, and look, you also recognize that over the course of 82 games, every team has those nights. In fact, Denver had one the night, the game before our game. They lost at home to Washington. So that's part of the reason they came out and played the way they did without Jokic and Murray. So we had one against Denver, so we responded. And, Milwaukee, same thing. Every team in the league has these stretches. It's human nature. Every team's got talent. Shots go in, shots don't go in. But over the course of the 82, there's just these huge swings, both health-wise, emotion-wise, and you just have to navigate the whole thing and keep moving forward.
How much has Jimmy Butler been a steadying influence, another additional steadying influence in that? I know he's never won a championship, but he took Miami deep on a couple of different occasions. Does that just give you an additional piece of somebody who is a veteran who kind of knows what's going on?
Well, I think there is a presence to Jimmy that leads to winning. It's a swagger, even amongst all the alphas in the NBA. I think Jimmy is an alpha among alphas. I really do. And I think Steph and Draymond needed that. They needed somebody like him because they were in some ways. Not feeling like they had enough of that next to them, like we've had in the past. We've been spoiled, obviously, with the talent that we've had here, but also the maturity and the presence. And so, that was missing earlier in the year. Jimmy he's got presence, he's got swagger, he's got belief. You guys can feel it watching the games. Our teammates feel it. Our fans feel it. The guy wins games, and it's showing.
Wait a minute, Steve. Are you saying that you've got NBA alpha rankings and Jimmy Butler is number one?
Wow.
He's.
I can tell you this. That's how he feels about himself, and that's hugely important. The number one guy of all time was Michael Jordan. Okay. As his teammate, I would walk into that arena and I would know that the other team was afraid of him. The officials were afraid of him. The fans were afraid of him. And even his own teammates, we were all a little afraid of him. Okay. And we all knew we were going to win. And that was the deal. Michael just dominated the space. And, there are very few guys like that. And but when you have guys like that, there's an incredible sense of security and confidence, and I think Jimmy's one of those guys. You can just feel his presence all the time.
Speaking of alpha behavior, we had a caller last week, or it was the beginning of this week. We were talking about you actually, and becoming the winningest coach of the Warriors, and we had a caller call in who said that he worked like security detail or something inside the building when you first arrived as head coach. And he stated that he was there for your very first practice and that you set the tone by kicking everybody, the whole team, out of practice because they were dribbling too much. Is this a true story in any way, shape, or form?
It does not ring a bell, guys.
Okay.
And I guarantee you, I didn't kick everybody else out of practice. I've never done that, and so I don't know where that came from.
Have you kicked individuals out of practice before?
Potentially, yeah,
okay.
That might have happened once.
I like that. Yeah. Potentially. Okay. And so I guess to follow up and ask you to name names probably won't happen. So, yeah, we'll pivot. And just your notion of alphas had me thinking about your San Antonio Spurs championship teams, and I'm wondering about Manu and Tony and Tim Duncan. Were any of them cut from the same kind of cloth that you're describing with Jimmy Butler and Michael Jordan, or does it not necessarily have to be that?
I think Avery Johnson was, honestly, and it was an interesting dynamic because usually the guy who's the alpha is also the best player, but I think Tim Duncan was a lot more like Steph in terms of like incredibly competitive and skilled and talented and an amazing leader, but it came from humility. And the type of alpha that I'm talking about, it doesn't come from humility. It comes from the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, I am the best here, and you guys are going to, follow me, and that's the way it is. And so it's a very different form of leadership. And Avery actually had that. And it was ironic because he was like the fourth best player on the team. but it was a well-constructed team because, I thought Tim and David were very soft-spoken, and we needed the fire and the leadership that Avery brought us. And, Pop sensed that too. And so Pop provided a lot of that alpha, presence. And so, every team's different. That's what makes it so much fun is the construction of a group of human beings and how they interact. It's fascinating.
All right, Coach.